Hi everyone, it's Raina. So this video is for those people who have their natal Neptune in the fourth house of home and family. Neptune is a planet of spirituality, psychic tendencies, magic, inspiration, dreams. But it's also the planet of illusion, delusion, which is lying to oneself, deception in general, lying in general, addiction, madness. And so if a child grows up in this environment, they can feel that something isn't really solid in their reality, because Neptune can create a fog in the fourth house where it's supposed to be about stability. The fourth house of our family of origin, our mother, our roots, the childhood, the actual physical property, the house. And that sense of, where do I come from, can be shrouded in mystery. I want to give out a shout out to the astrocodex.com for providing some of the information that I'll be discussing. Actually, when I do these, I already have an idea of what I'm going to talk about, but I just want to generate as many angles as I can possibly get. And so I go through here and then I just use it as a springboard, really, for my own observations or ideas. But I wanted to give them a shout out. And there was a specific reason why I want to say that. Now I kind of forgot. You would be surprised how many times I have started this reading, this video. It's just unreal. But in any case, they say here, Astro Codex mentions that many children born in orphanages have this placement. I have no reason to doubt that. I believe it. If they say it's true, I will take them at their word. For me, it's a more likely scenario that somehow they've been lied to within their actual family about something. And what I think some of the top examples would be, one of them would be what happened to Jack Nicholson, which is that, the famous actor, when he was 16, I believe, he found out that his mother was actually his sister. And of course, in earlier generations, out of wedlock pregnancy was much more shameful, scandalous, what have you, and especially if somebody's born in a small town, although I don't know if he was, but just in general, it just was like, oh my gosh. So that's why they did that, and I'm sure that they thought that they were doing the right thing, but he felt betrayed, and rightfully so. So if we look at the number 4 from the fourth house, it's a number that is connected to Saturn, and it has to do with foundation, which makes perfect sense because the square has 4 sides. And the root chakra, the first chakra is the root chakra, the Muladhara. Is that, I hope I'm correct with that one. And that is connected to Saturn. That is the Saturn center. And Saturn is about that sense of order. Maybe a better word is boundaries, or what's the other, because I'm looking here, Cafe Astrology, I was looking for the planet Saturn. Boundaries, limits, restriction, but there's another word that I just saw. where is that word? Structure? Did I say the word structure? Structure. That's a perfect word. I think I said that though. But there was another word, definition. Okay. But Neptune is about dissolution. I hope I'm pronouncing it right. It's, in other words, dissolving. So it's like no boundaries, boundaryless. So you have the number 4 representing what this area is, where, when you think of a home, what makes a home, it has 4 walls, but they keep out the world. And we don't always want to let the world in. Well, Neptune, everything just is, I was going to say shot to hell, where it's just like there are no rules, there are no limits. And so a child can grow up like this. Maybe the home is left open for anybody to come in. Maybe the parents or caregivers don't have any kind of discernment about who they allow in their home, and the child is put at risk. Maybe what if there's the single mother, and she has men coming in, and she even allows them to take care of her child, and she barely knows them herself. What does that do? If you have Neptune in this place, in this 4th house, and you have very few memories of your childhood, there may be a reason for that. It's a protective device. Another thing is, if people overly idealize their childhood, sometimes that can be an overcompensation for what really happened, and that might need to be looked at. But in any case, there is the sense that you may not have grown up with a lot of structure. And one reason is that the mother may have been more like a child herself. She may have been helpless, Neptunian. Maybe she was a literal Pisces, which is ruled by Neptune. But definitely maybe this tragic figure, this victim, this eternal victim. Maybe she had mental illness. If the child grows up with an addicted parent or one with mental illness, the child may have to fend for themselves, or even take care of siblings and be that parentified child, not have a childhood in a lot of ways, and perhaps even take care of the parent. But the child will not look back and necessarily resent the parent. They will see the parent as being a victim themselves in some way. And, one thing that Codex Astrology mentioned was, and I hope I said that, gosh, as I've been doing these over and over again, I've been forgetting what I said earlier in the video, which is, not so cool because I don't want to repeat myself. But, the codexastrology.com is where I tend to get the bulk of my ideas that I expound upon. And I want to give a shout out to them if I didn't do so earlier. But they talk about this idea of the parent being a scapegoat in their life. And that's how the parent may have grown up to feel like the victim and attract other experiences that kind of solidified that in their mind. But anyway, the parent may be a religious dupe, where they fall for a cult. They fall for some kind of religion that not only takes their resources, but takes their time from the family. And, or, creating this alternative universe because of a religious sect that affects the child, where everything becomes about this particular myth. And I'm not, this is not to, out myself as an atheist. I'm not an atheist whatsoever. But by the same token, I don't really believe organized religion, the different creation stories, okay, or the different belief systems of the organized religions, and well, I'm not going to get into that, but if you're interested, there's a great book on how they all have similar origins, but the point being that it affects the family. And who was it to say, was it Karl Marx, religion is an opiate of the masses? Where we're talking about Neptune, we are talking about drugs, but drugs or addiction. But we're not talking about simply, substance abuse in that sense, the literal intoxicants. People can be intoxicated by these religious experiences. They can be intoxicated by some kind of fantasy which they have constructed in their own minds, probably because of their own trauma, to allow them to function and not go completely insane. And so the child sees this, and the child can realize at some point if their parent is grounded or not. And even if the child suspects that something isn't quite right, they might idealize that parent. And I really do believe this can be the mother, okay, more than necessarily the father. And the child will be very generous about this mother who may have not been what she should have been. Because the child has compassion, the child believes that something was that the parent, the mother was wronged, was a victim. On another site, I found it very interesting that they said something about the house itself may be subject to entities haunting it. And on Codex, they said, I'll read what it says here, and it also connects to you as the person with Neptune in the fourth. It says, due to the fact that Neptune is connected with the collective subconscious and unconscious, its placement in the fourth house of the individual can gift him with an inheritance of occult powers, which will be rather uncontrolled. The planet rules magic and illusion and can create a lot of strange facts, both around the native's family and his childhood. The energies that manifest are beyond his control. And unless he has some strong plants in the eighth house, he will not be able to tame them. But that kind of triggered that memory of what I had read on an earlier site, like days ago, when I was going to do this video earlier. So yeah, there may be something even with your mother that has a connection, I believe, to her having these powers. But you might as well, because you're coming from this environment. I mean, yeah, it could be like you come from a family of psychics or something. And, for what that's worth, if you're somebody whose sun is in Capricorn or sun is in Virgo or Taurus or something like that, you may not take very kindly to that. Perhaps you even try to shun that. Come to think of it, let's talk about some of those things. I think that if you have a sun in an earth sign, that it can create a sense of discomfort to have this in your chart. I have often said that, we don't perceive things in the same way. So what for one person may be like totally traumatic, another person, it barely registers. I mean, it really doesn't make or break them. Let's put it that way. It's not probably that casual, but it doesn't make or break them. And the other person, it devastates them. And I think this is because of certain other influences that can make the person in much greater need of having stability in their lives. So, for instance, if you have a sun in a water sign, you're born to live life through your feelings. And so, having compassion for others is a key principle in that, because you're going to be an empath anyhow. Or I would say too, like a moon in a water sign, maybe even more so in a lot of cases than the sun sign. But the sun sign for sure, because I mean, you may even end up with a career as a healer. But sun or moon in water, you're comfortable with these concepts. The fourth house is a water house being ruled by Cancer in the universal chart. So feelings are not something that you reject. For an air sign or an earth sign, which tend to be more addicted in some cases to logic, and I put that in air quotes, or rational thinking, it can be distressing to have Neptune in the fourth house, because you can feel like you didn't get a good start in life. You can feel like you come from shaky ground. And this is kind of what I was alluding to when I'm talking about the base chakra, the first chakra. When a person has their origins in something that creates this sense of lack of stability, what can happen is that they, as adults, they either replicate it. In other words, they mimic the behavior of the people who did not show them proper discipline and who lived lives of chaos, or they are hyper controlling or hyper disciplined as a reaction to it. But when you're reacting, you're not truly choosing. It's just kind of like knee jerk. And therefore it's going to usually be very what's the word? Exaggerated. And it can create within you this sense of not feeling that you are truly choosing it for yourself. You might feel that it's more like something you are being forced to do, which is not true either, obviously. Nobody's forcing you to choose a certain path, but it just might end up that way, that you feel compelled to do something. But it's really because, especially with the sun in earth, it's like you're aspiring in your life in one way or the other to create these firm foundations, these things that are tangible in the world. And Neptune is intangible. Dreams are intangible. And so the thing is that it can feel as if this placement is the source of a lot of problems for somebody, while other people, they kind of shrug and are more accepting of what has occurred. And this is like when you see when adults are dealing with their childhood. And sometimes, this may not come until middle age. It's not necessarily even in your 20s that you fully look at these things. But as you get older, and certain events like having children yourselves, or simply dealing with this parent, again, I would say especially the mother, but it can be the general family itself, that you begin to like if you've had this rather over idealization of the mother, that it gradually gets stripped away, and you realize, okay, you see that she maybe makes excuses, blames, plays the victim, and that's when you kind of like get angry because you feel like she should have done more or something like that. Again, I do believe that most people with Neptune in the fourth house are going to have a sense of like a protectiveness of the mother. But there will be some who reject, maybe even reject her, or, stay away from the family that they grew up in. They kind of like are the ones that get away as soon as they can. And again, some of these people, you can become very successful in life precisely because you have a messed up family. It's interesting, sometimes I hear people talking about, or read online, comments on YouTube, for any video, where people are talking about things like that. And they tell these stories of like, oh yeah, I got away from the family as soon as I could, and they really had to raise themselves. I'm talking about those types of scenarios which you may identify with yourself. And what happens is you develop resourcefulness. So it's really interesting how these bad circumstances can lead to really good results. However, that doesn't mean that emotionally you might not feel cheated in some cases. Maybe if you have a sun and or moon in fire, because fire is very idealistic and very connected to the inner child. And maybe you guys feel that sense of loss of childhood most acutely. An earth sign, is coming to this from a practical standpoint. An air sign is pretty unemotional, but fire is very passionate and into that sense of, what it means to be a child, and the spontaneity and having that loss of freedom of having to have responsibilities foisted upon you at too early an age. That might feel like a loss if you had to kind of take care of yourself, take care of your siblings at a very early age. And you may feel resentment, perhaps, about that, about not having that. Another thing that can happen related to deception, I feel, and I'm talking about this is not something that I'm reading here, but I'm just thinking, is that there may be, well, this is piggybacking on where I've heard that this is the house of skeletons in the closet. So an example would be if the child is forced to keep a secret about the family. So if the family is in some criminal enterprise, the mob, a gang, like a family that is connected to a gang. People think that it's just maybe one person. No, you can have a whole family. A child can be born into a gang family, and it's just they've been doing it for more than one generation. And so the child grows up around criminal behavior where people are hiding things, hiding contraband, hiding money, lying to others. And I feel that this is a real big deal because children are naturally ethical. And, that's why children sometimes blurt things out that are truthful. They're truth tellers. And when they see that the people that are most influential around them are lying, are like saying things are not true, that's corrupting. That's a corrupting influence. And, we can discuss about, oh, well, it shouldn't be illegal in the first place and things like that. That's a separate discussion. We're talking about what the child is forced to do. So the child cannot feel free. They always feel like they have to keep secrets about something. And this could be in a different area. Perhaps this could even be like a prominent family. Perhaps the father, I'm talking about the mother, but we can be talking about the family as a whole. And some astrologers even think the fourth house is the father for reasons that make absolutely no sense to me based on what the fourth house represents. But we can just talk about the family in general. So the father or the mother may be a religious figure. Like maybe they are a pastor. And there's a lot of sketchy stuff going on at home that needs to be shameful stuff going on at home. Molestation, like sexual abuse or physical abuse. And meanwhile, it's this image of like this perfect person that the congregation is privy to. I think that happened with one of those televangelists or something, and his daughter called the authorities. I can't remember. And I don't even remember if that turned out to be the truth. But we know that when a child comes from a prominent family, like a politician, they're forced to uphold an image. So even just on that level, maybe the politician isn't doing something shady, miracle of miracles. But just the fact that the child has to conduct themselves in a way where they have to be perfect, that is inauthentic living. And that kind of thing is injurious to children growing up because they are forced to be other than they are. It's about generating an illusion. Nobody's perfect all of the time, even if they're good people. If you're in this, if you have this placement, you may fantasize about living by a body of water, and maybe you've already, made that happen for yourself, because it's going to bring you peace. The water's effects will be, will have a tranquilizing effect on you. One word of caution that Astro Codex mentioned, and certainly could be the case, because Neptune is about not having boundaries and is also about compassion. People with this placement should be careful that they are making sure not to just make your home into a halfway house where people are, staying because they're down on their luck. Now, let me clarify. Certainly, this is the position of somebody who invites people to come live with them if they are struggling financially, if they, are having some kind of problem in their life. And that may be a wonderful thing to do for somebody. But if you just do so indiscriminately, what can happen is you end up with people who won't leave. It can throw your life into chaos, and then you recreate what you had when you were growing up. And that's why I say about boundaries. There's nothing wrong with boundaries. And if you grow up with this position, you must learn about boundaries because you were not provided with them. And that may be an area that you struggle with in general. Who knows though? Maybe you are the exact opposite and you are incredibly rigid. I don't believe that anybody with a certain placement in their chart will automatically follow this line. They may grow up as an adult to do the exact opposite, again, because they're being reactionary. So it's important to realize that when you have very rigid ideas, that you're probably overreacting to something, and that those attitudes need to soften so that there's more moderation. Okay, that's what I have for you. I hope that you enjoyed this. If you would like a private reading, please click on the link below so you can see what types of readings I offer. Thanks for listening. Take care. Bye.